Hello and welcome to Dr. Vinay Mohan's classes. Today I'll be presenting you about an issue which was in news recently. It was published on 15th of March this year, saying that who is a scheduled tribe person or which community needs to be included under scheduled tribe list in India, because lot of issues have been arising in the recent past, not only in northeastern part of India, that is the Meitei community versus Kuki-Zo community, and the conflict between various tribal groups in the name of Naga tribes in northeast India, but also in Andhra Pradesh, that is Valmiki or Boya community and Kuruba community are claiming to be included under scheduled tribes in India. So under these circumstances, the very basic question would arise that who is a scheduled tribe person or a community or a group in which region, and what criteria are we following or the government of India is following to include them and to provide all the benefits and the welfare measures for their well-being and development. So in this regard, we might get questions not only in the civil service preliminary exam, which is to be held on 25th of May this year, but also in civil service mains examination, both in general essay, GS1, GS2 papers, along with the optional subject anthropology and sociology as well. So in this regard, this issue would assume greater significance for all the candidates who are preparing seriously for UPSC civil service examination, both at preliminary level as well as mains level. Let's have a deep dive onto the issue now. Now the question would arise that who is a scheduled tribe person or a group, and who or which agency is authorized to classify them and include them based on which criteria. We all know that the Anthropological Survey of India, which officially began its operations in the year 1945, which now after independence works under the Ministry of Culture. So Anthropological Survey of India, along with the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes and various tribal research institutions, have recently raised their concern regarding the outdated and obsolete criteria used as per the recommendations of Lokur Committee of 1965. The criteria are not met by many tribal communities or the prospective scheduled tribal communities who are claiming the status of scheduled tribes in India. So under these circumstances, it is imperative for us to understand what exactly is the issue and who would fulfill those criteria and who would not, so that the government of India can clearly take a stand on this and manage or resolve the disputes among various communities across the country. So let's have a look at all these issues now. Now when you look at it, the scheduled tribes, according to 2011 census, which is prevailing and valid census as of now, we have approximately 8.6% of scheduled tribes in India according to Government of India census report here. As you can see that the Jharkhand and northeastern parts of India have highest concentration of scheduled tribes when compared with the total state population accordingly. And we will have a look at the criteria which we are following as of now. So what is the constitutional status for scheduled tribes or anyone to be included under scheduled tribes list? So we have the Article 366 and Article 342 are the only provisions, constitutional provisions, concerned with selecting or including scheduled tribes or any community to be included under scheduled tribe list. So lack of clear definition, lack of clear-cut criteria to select and include communities under scheduled tribe list is the root cause of this conflict or problem. So we can have the issue arising out of lack of clear definition. So we can see that here recently the Darlang community of Tripura has been included under scheduled tribes list, because the Darlang community has around 11,000 members in Tripura, and also the Darlang community members are actively participating in the local politics, which are governed by Schedule 6 of the Constitution of India. Because somebody is active in politics doesn't mean that that community needs to be included under scheduled tribes list. Then who should be and under what circumstances, fulfilling which criteria would come into picture. So that is what we need to discuss about in this class. So we have distribution of tribals in India, as you can see in the picture here. Yes. So over 705 tribal communities have been included under scheduled tribe list. So you can see this here across various states in India, that the experts, the tribal research institutions and their experts, anthropologists, various sociologists and various politicians and constitutional experts are raising a concern over non-fulfillment of criteria by various communities to be included under scheduled tribes list. So we have anthropologists and experts are calling for a paradigm shift in defining tribes in India. So who is a tribal person or a tribal community and who is not, and how to include them? So a binary classification was in vogue till now. What is binary classification here? Whether a person or a community is a tribal community or a person or not. That is, you have to select and choose a person as a tribal or a community as a tribal or not. So this way or that way. So that is binary classification of tribals here. So this binary classification is coming under scrutiny now. Instead of a clear-cut binary classification, the experts and anthropologists have preferred a spectrum of tribalness. What is spectrum of tribalness here? That means a degree of becoming or being a tribal or being identified as a tribal person or a community. So a spectrum, that means various criteria, multiple criteria need to be fulfilled by a community to be called as or to be included under scheduled tribes in India. So that is what is the requirement or requisite. So the demand comes amid rising claims of ST status, scheduled tribe status, including by the Meitei community in Manipur. So that is how the issue came onto the stage to be discussed here. As we can see that here, that according to Lokur Committee report and recommendations in 1965, certain criteria have been prescribed by the Government of India, and any community fulfilling these criteria would be or can be included under scheduled tribes in India. What are those criteria here? Number one, primitive traits. Traits means physical traits or racial criteria. We call them as racial criteria or physical traits. That means primitive physical features. They do not resemble physically about the appearance, their skin color, eye color, nose, hair or head or facial or nasal index or indices, and overall physical representation of community of members. So primitive traits would be included or considered. Second is distinctive culture. We know that physical criteria are tangible, but cultural criteria are intangible. What is cultural criteria here? That means their belief systems, their religion, and their concept of what is right, what is wrong, what is just and what is not, and what is the moral or ethical principle behind their actions and behavior and what are not. So next is geographical isolation, a very, very significant aspect here. Isolation means physically separated, whether on islands or in a deep dense forest or a hill slopes or hilltops. So these are the physical isolation based criteria. So whichever community is relatively isolated geographically from other communities can be considered as scheduled tribes. Next is the shyness of contact with the larger community. Shyness is a relative aspect here. That means because of our globalization, westernization, development of industrial infrastructure and communication and transportation infrastructures, no community is completely cut off or completely shy because of social media and internet as well, but relative and subjective though. Next is what? Backwardness, economic, educational backwardness. Backwardness also is not very specific and a clear-cut criterion, but still relative backwardness would become one of the criteria. So here these criteria are now criticized as outdated, obsolete, or in general no specific community meets all these criteria. So that is what is the root cause of the problem here. So meaningless, it is termed as meaningless by various experts now. As we can see that here, what are the reasons or need for a new approach? Many people ask this question, why should we worry about this now? Because we already have a clearly laid criteria, and whoever or whichever community meets these criteria can be included. It is not so straightforward now when compared with few decades ago. So no community fully meets the existing criteria. These criteria were designed in 1965. But this is 2025 and things have changed. People have changed. Their cultures, belief systems, and their relative isolation and shyness of contact have changed over a period of time, thanks to our preferences of industrialization, globalization, westernization, and improvement in transportation and communication aspects. So instead of rigid criteria, scholars propose a matrix of or spectrum. Spectrum means multiple criteria, a range of criteria, which can include many communities under the aspect of tribalness, not just few specific rigid 4 or 5 criteria, which is difficult to be met by various communities. And Anthropological Survey of India, as we introduced earlier, and the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes are deliberating on a systematic tool for classification. So this is the need for the new approach, and the approach would include both tangible and intangible aspects. What do you mean by tangible and intangible aspects here? Number one, based on social institutions. That means the governing principles behind the behavior and decision making of members in a given community in a specific geographical region. So like marriage, a primary social institution. Kinship, who is who to whom, and accordingly behavioral aspects would be determined or regulated. And then classification of relatives, because kinship based relationships would play a very important role in identification or identity and transactions between members of a particular tribal community. Next is rituals and practices. For example, many tribal communities assume or they believe that sacrificing humans is ethically right and is positive, and the non-tribal communities would assume that human sacrifice is not ethically or morally right. So there is a difference in their rituals and belief systems, and this becomes the intangible aspect here. Next is a language and dialect. Language has been a long debated issue concerned with tribals. Many tribal communities in general have a language of their own, at least a dialect of their own, which usually doesn't have a script and doesn't get the support of scriptures which are historical in nature. Next is what? The material aspects of their culture. So what do you mean by material civilizational aspects or tangible aspects? The tools used by a particular community, or the headgear, weapons, or any material aspects which prove the identity of a particular community here. And self-identification of communities, a very, very significant aspect here, that the tribalness is the identification of a community member within a group. So all these criteria would play a very important role in including certain aspects under spectrum of tribalness according to the Anthropological Survey of India and the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. The need and the necessity of spectrum of tribalness is based on a concept note highlighting the persistent difficulty in defining tribes, because many communities are debating or asking to be included under inclusion under scheduled tribes list here. Yes, a systematic classification tool will help the tribal research institutions in preparing ethnographic reports for policy making. So tribal research institutions would make in general ethnographic report. What do you mean by ethnographic report here? A detailed analysis and field work based research done by anthropologists, sociologists, and other experts in these fields. So ethnographic study means exclusive and particular detailed study of a particular community in a particular geographical region at a given point in time. So these reports need to be published and submitted to the decision making authorities. Only then they can take a decision whether to include that community under scheduled tribe list or not. And then the demand for inclusion under scheduled tribes status. So these demands are continuously increasing in India in the recent past, as you can see that here. So currently has 756 scheduled tribe entries, including sub entries. Since 2011 census, 27 communities have been added to the scheduled tribes list. So hundreds of communities seek inclusion. That means their communities are or those communities are insisting the government of India to include them under scheduled tribe list here, sometimes leading to inter-community conflicts, whether which community is more eligible to be included under scheduled tribes and which community is not. So various communities are entering into conflicts with each other and amongst themselves. For example, Meitei versus Kuki-Zo in the northeastern part of India, and various tribal communities in the name of Naga tribes. So these are few examples. And what are the approaches we need to follow, especially anthropological approaches? So we know that these approaches might be little scientific and deeper aspects concerned with the subject here, but if you are preparing for the mains examination, these approaches would be of great help. For example, we have two approaches which we follow in anthropology and sociology for inclusion of or studying certain communities, whether to be included under scheduled tribes or not. Number one is civilizational approach. Number two is evolutionary approach. Civilizational approach is relatively recent in nature, based on the material or tangible aspects of a particular community, and evolutionary approach focuses more on the past and how past is a reason for their present condition or status. So scholars advocate moving from an evolutionary approach to historical or civilizational approach. So gradually we have to move from the aspects concerned with the past or historical or evolutionary towards the so-called approaches concerned with material aspects, tangible aspects, and the contemporary related issues concerned with certain communities here. That is civilizational approaches here. So communities are seen as they perceive themselves rather than the others studied by outsiders. So in anthropology we have an approach called as emics and ethics approach. So ethics approach means how one scholar is looking at a particular community by being an outsider, whereas emic approach talks about how people identify themselves as an insider perspective. So we have to understand a particular community based on an insider's perspective rather than an outsider's perspective. So it is not what you think they are, it is what they think who they are, and self-identification of members of a community holds greater significance rather than an outsider's perspective. So this must be given due importance in including a particular community under scheduled tribes list. And ultimately we can conclude this discussion with these following points. What are they here? Revised classificatory system would help in better governance. Better governance means what? The policies, the legislations and the schemes and programs need to reach the truly deserving people so that we can achieve the objectives or goals of governance. So equitable distribution of benefits so that they can have an inclusive democracy ultimately, and then conflict resolution for the purpose of maintenance of peace, law and order. We need to resolve the conflicts on an urgent basis. So the focus should shift to cultural aspects, historical aspects and self-identification aspects rather than the so-called outdated, obsolete criteria which we are following now based on Lokur Committee. Please remember, Lokur Committee report was accepted in 1965 based on the prevailing conditions back then, and those conditions which we still are continuing to include or enlist certain communities under scheduled tribes list, which may be obsolete or outdated. So we need to have a new approach so that we can include more and more communities under scheduled tribes list for better governance, better inclusiveness and better conflict resolving objectives. So this is the essence of the recent issue concerned with who is a scheduled tribe person or community and who is not, based on certain criteria which need to be revised. So this is in brief about the issue which was recently in news, and this issue and discussion would be useful not only for the preliminary examination but also for the mains examination in various papers like general essay, GS1, GS2 as well as the optional subject anthropology as well. If you feel that the video of some use to you or added some value to your preparation, do not forget to like, share and subscribe our channel, which will motivate us to bring a lot of value added content which may be of great help to your preparation. Thanks and all the best.